Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show. Another exciting show, another exciting guest. Today, we're going to talk with the beautiful Sheekha, the podcast host of Rise and Tell. You know, imagine with me a beautiful lady coming from India to the United States to Canada, what that journey must be like. Because we're going to talk a little bit about heritage, culture, and how that may need to change so you can rise and shine in your own purpose. Wow, look how I did that.
That was nice.
Sheekha, welcome to the show, baby girl.
Thank you, Andre.
Before we get started, tell the viewers a little about who you are.
Sure. I am Sheekha Singh. I am a podcast host. I'm also a published author of 2 books. The first one is The IT Girl, and the second one is Unburnable Ambition. It's about burnout for overachievers. And the first book was about why we need more women in IT or in tech. I have been in the tech industry for over 12 years. I moved from India to the US for my master's degree. And then I wanted to do something and publish books. So I moved to Canada 6 years ago, and now Canada is home.
The United States is huge.
Yes.
How did you determine what part of the United States that you wanted to start your journey?
Can you believe that I chose Omaha, Nebraska to start?
No, I can't.
And I come from a southern state in India. So it was a completely different weather in Omaha, obviously, in the Midwest. But I chose just based off of the scholarship. Whichever institute gave me the most scholarship, that's the one that I went with.
Which other schools gave you scholarships? Just
there was one in California and one in Chicago.
And you couldn't choose the one in Chicago?
That was a little bit more expensive.
So let's go back a minute. And this is going to get into the culture part. So bear with me a little bit, because the idea of what I want to do is educate people about culture, religion, and how sometimes it has to shift, or has it shift since you've been over to the United States. So let's go here for a minute. We mentioned IT, and we know IT is big in India, but let's get real. I'm gonna cut straight through the shit. When you're dealing with culture, from what I understand, this may be my limited information. Women in your culture are usually submissive. The man usually controls everything. Because I see it here in the United States. They're covered. They don't make eye contact. Tell me what's that's like for you in your country a little bit, because you have a system put in place of heritage that's completely norm. So educate me a little bit about how it is, and how did you manage to bypass tradition to come to the United States to start something somewhat different?
My experience was completely different, Andre, because my mom was a single mom. My dad passed away when me and my sister were very young. I was 5 and my sister was 3, I think. And so we lived with our grandma. And so my upbringing was totally different. I got the permission and the freedom to do everything that I wanted to do growing up. And confidence played a huge role. There was nothing my mother said no to. So I think that's what carried with me going forward, even when I grew up or started doing different things. And when culture comes into picture, yes, I love it. I love the culture, I love the food, I love everything. But I feel like there has to be a certain point where one needs to start asking questions. Why are we doing this? What's the point of doing this? Rather than just blindly following what has been taught from multiple generations. And so I am someone who will respect everything, but if something doesn't make sense to me, then there's no way that I'm going to follow that.
Give me an idea of what you mean. And I like the way that you said that a lot of people will follow a system, even though they have questions, and they will forego the questions because I think they don't want to, their critical mind won't allow them to because they have a fixed mindset. What were some of the questions that you asked, and why did you ask those questions, and what were the responses that you were getting?
Yeah, I can give you 2 examples that come to my mind. And I think I mentioned this previously too. But I'll start with the first one. The very first thing, both me and my sister went to a convent school, a Catholic convent school, because that was the only one in the area back then that was really good, had great education system, and the teachers and the quality of education was great. So obviously, when you go to school every day, the first thing that they teach you is to pray, and it was, "Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name." And so when I came back home, whenever we had festivals and ceremonies or anything, my grandma used to do the ceremony, and then me and my sister would sit down and she'd say, "Okay, pray," and we would go, "Our Father in heaven," and she would just get so furious. And when I asked her, when I would ask her, I'm like, "Why are you furious?" Because, it's, isn't like God one, and isn't the point going across that, okay, I want good grades, irrespective of which God it is, I am still praying, and she would have no answer. Wow. So that was one thing. And the second thing is, this happened like 4 years ago. My mom came over to visit us, and my husband, he bought a Dodge Ram truck. And it wasn't even a brand new truck. It was a secondhand 1-year-old truck. And he parked it in the driveway, and my mom got 4 lemons for each tire. And then she put it in front of the tires. And then she drew something on the car. And then she had 2 incense sticks and a coconut, like a ripe coconut. And then she did her ceremony, maybe for the well-being that he shouldn't get into any accident or anything. And then she asked him to drive over those 4 lemons. I'm like, what is happening? Why are you doing all this? And she just had no answer. She just believed in it, so she did it. And I'm like, you need to question, like, are 4 lemons going to save him from an accident in the future? No. No amount of lemons or coconut would save him, but
Let me ask this question, and it may seem a little sensitive, but if it is, I'm sorry. How do you think your life would have been? I know it's hard to look into the future based on your culture. How do you think your life would have been different had you not lost your father? Had you had an arranged marriage? Because like I shared with you, a lot of my friends that I came in contact with from India, man, they had straight culture. Like, I remember, I won't mention her name. I remember one of them in particular. I'm still friends with him. They picked his wife out. And I remember asking him this question. I said, man, what if you don't like her? What if she's not gorgeous? What if the intimacy isn't, what you want it to be? He goes, Andre, in our culture, this is what you do.
Not anymore.
And I was like, wow. And I mean, it was my first education with the culture. I didn't know that they gave groupies, I said, what is that? He said, it's money, but I was still shocked that somebody's going to tell me who I'm going to marry and I have to stay with them. But let's go a little bit deeper. You can clarify this. We had a couple of females that left India for persecution for their husbands, them leaving their husbands, where they was ostracized from communities and shame written and had to flee. And it just made me curious. How do you think your life would have been if your father had not passed? Would you have been forced to follow the same tradition? I get what you're saying. You're strong as hell. But let's get real. The father rules the household in your culture. How do you think that would? I know it's hard to see in the future, but I'm pretty sure you think about it at times. Like, what would have been different had you not lost your father?
Definitely things would have been different, but I do know one thing, that even my dad was different. He was the first man in his entire generation and family and distant relatives who flew from India to Africa just because he wanted to explore and go abroad. And then when we were born, he took us there too. So I don't remember anything. I just have the photographs and whatever my mom tells me. But I do have pictures. I'm like, wow. And I'm talking about like early 90s and 89 and 88. And nobody had even thought of going abroad at that point in time in India. It wasn't the norm back then. So I think it would have been different, but not too different, is what I feel. Maybe we would have moved away from India way sooner. And I would, like, instead of 2014, maybe I would have moved abroad way sooner. But yeah, culturally, even though if he would have been the head of the household and if he would have managed things, maybe we would have had more extra ties with his side of the family.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it, and then nothing more. Because what the school that I went to, that I believe played a huge role in how I am and what I am today, it was the same even when he was there.
You're married now.
Yes.
You got your mom. How did she look? Because let me go back. I'm trying to understand at the same time.
Yes.
Your culture usually picks who you marry. Unfortunately, your father's not here. How did that whole dynamics change from, you being able to pick who you want now versus tradition? Because how does all that play? Because you're not, even though you're from there, you're not really obeying or following culture.
Yeah. So I picked out my partner, and my mom did not have a problem with the fact that I picked out a partner. She had a problem with his color, which is different. Now she's like all gaga over him, and she calls him her son, and they hang out together. They
What do you mean his
talk.
color? Is he African American?
No, he's not. He's Indian, but he's a little more darker skinned than I am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
does that really make a difference?
It does. I mean, to her, it did, I guess. It doesn't.
Why? I'm curious on that. Not just show any shame. I'm trying to educate the people, but why is that a difference?
So in India, mostly, so we think that, actual racism based on color is at a global level very different. But in India, it's so stupid that people differentiate even with different shades of brown. Like, yes, it used to be different, not anymore, but you will still, like, I still hear some of my friends and some of their relatives talking about, oh, I don't care if the baby is, boy or a girl, but I want them to be fair skinned. And by fair skinned, they mean like a little lighter shade of brown, not the white, fair.
Oh, wow, I've heard that before. I just never understood. Is the skin color based on
region
or social economics?
No, it's totally based on the region, because if you're in the south, obviously it's way more warmer and it's hot, and you're near the beach, or it's way too warm all year round. So obviously you tend to become your skin tends to get a little more darker thanks to the melatonin. But yes, so it depends on the region. People who are up north and who live in the eastern areas are usually light brown. In like their shade is lighter brown than what I am now. So
let me go here. You mentioned something.
Yes.
You had resources to fly to go to Africa, to go to these other places. How does that play out in India, where I believe, I'm not sure, you guys have a caste system? That if you are poor, you're pretty much going to be poor. There's really hardly any maneuverability to be like American that you can rise up. With that being said, you had an economic advantage, so to speak, according to being able to fly and go to, your father being able to go to Africa and other places. How does that make you different than the other individuals from your country?
So, Andre, what you're explaining or what you heard about that used to be the case 20 years ago, not anymore. Now, if you are someone who has had very modest beginnings, but if you get a decent education and a decent degree and you can communicate well, there are very high chances that irrespective of your caste, you can still get a job. You can apply for opportunities outside. If you study well, if you talk well, then and get good grades, then of course, obviously, there are also organizations that send people to the US, to North America and Europe just based on performance. It doesn't matter which caste you're from, what religion you're from or whatever. So it's all about you making sure that you are standing out in a country that has over 1 billion people.
What about the
way more than 1 billion?
Thanks for clearing that up too. What about the women? Like I said, I had a couple of women on the show that are forced into traditional marriages and stuff. Like, have you encountered situations like that with your friends that really hate that they have to follow tradition? Because clearly you might be like a rock star to people that you're in contact with, because you're not following the norm. You're not taking your grandmother's advice with the lemons and running over the tires.
Yeah, no, I do have friends, very close friends, in fact, who had boyfriends, had relationships, but then the minute it came to marriage, their parents kind of blackmailed them and told them that, we will just eat something and die if you don't marry a guy from our religion or caste or, the one that we choose. So yes, I do have friends like that. And I still hear a lot of stories from a lot of different people back home that say, you know what, they're still stuck in that same old, belief, same old cycle, that generational cycle where, they want to choose and decide for their kids and what they will eat, what they will do, where they will stay, what they will do, etc., etc. So yes, I'm not going to deny the fact that things have changed there. That is still very much the case. But I feel deep down that yes, respect is one thing. You definitely have to respect your parents, your family, take care of them. That's what makes us different. But I feel you also need to have confidence in your choice. The reason why parents do that is because they think that you're not going to make a good choice. You're not going to choose the right partner. So if you yourself have been dependent on someone for your whole life, how is it that you're going to prove to them that you can choose the right partner for yourself? And that's the thing that I see where most people fail. They cannot convince their parents by answering the most basic questions that they ask them. How are you both going to survive? What does the guy do? What does his family look like? And how much does he earn? How much are you going to earn? How are you going to manage your family, finances? Where do you live? Like his family, do they want you guys to live together, live separate, etc.? And most girls just give up. They just don't have that confidence in the kind of partner they choose, and they don't want to fight for their love, which is why they eventually end up in like, okay, fine, I'll just get married to whoever you choose.
Wow, thank you. How, without mentioning their names, how many people have you known personally, without giving their names, that have followed down that path, that call you or text you and be like, you know what, I really fucked up?
I would say at least 7 to 8 people for
What?
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go here. I'm asking all kind of culture questions now. Let's stick with the women now. There's always, from what I've heard from the women that's been on my show,
Mm-hmm.
it's not an easy thing to walk away from when they do that. So now the rabbit hole becomes deeper. I'm really surprised that there's not a lot of mental issues with women there. And let's get real, even the men, because I won't mention their names. They hated it. They had to pick that their partners got picked. You can look at the disgust when I see them. I'd be like, well, why did you do it? And you know what? Like you said, ask the question. They can't never answer the question. They say it's tradition. So I'm asking myself, let's go back to my question in general. How do you think their mindset is, knowing that it's almost like a yo-yo. They're doing the same thing every day, but they're hating it, trying to figure out how to do it. But at the end of the day, there also comes repercussions if they decide to walk away. What's your take on that?
Oh, that's my favorite topic, Andre. I love it. Here's what I think. I feel that no matter what choice you take in life, you need to be okay with the consequences, and you should be in a position where you cannot blame the person beside you or the person that you've lived with for your entire life. So, for example, I told my mom when we were talking about the marriage stuff and everything, and she's like, "Oh, but he's a Christian." And my grandma had no issues, but my mom did, and my mom's supposed to be the cooler one. I told her one thing, and I'm like, "Hey, listen, tomorrow, if things go wrong with him, you should be lucky that I am never going to blame you for what happened to me." And I feel that applies to everything and everyone. You earn a certain amount of money and you are trying to buy a car that is way off limits. You get yourself into debt, then there's nobody to blame but you and your choices with the car, be it clothing, partner, kids, everything. We chose not to have kids. And it wasn't just, oh, I woke up one day and I decided not to have kids. No, we had a lot of conversations. We did the math, finances, emotional, mental stuff, everything. We took everything in the picture, made a list of what we actually wanted out of life, what we wanted to do, our dreams, travel or cars or motorcycle or in different countries, etc., etc. And then I'm like, okay, now picture the exact same thing if we are going to have kids. Would you still be able to do all these things that we listed with a kid? And very clearly, we knew what the answer was, and we're like, okay, this is not for us. Tomorrow, if something happens and if we have the regret that we didn't have kids, then we cannot blame anybody else. We would be responsible for our own choices. So I feel people who compromise for their parents, get into the arranged marriage and hate their life are just giving the next generation trauma. That's it. They are not happy with their life. They're not happy with their partners. They're not going to be happy with their kids, their everything. What is the point in living that kind of life? That too in the most developed country in the world. If you were back in India, at least you have your friends you grew up with, your family, your network, your relatives. It is home for them. But you got the chance to come and start from scratch and build a whole life for yourself and your kids in America or wherever it is in abroad. And why? And you're still not happy with it. You can earn $500,000 and still not be happy. So what's the point? So my take on it personally is if something's not making you happy, you just have to choose what is more important for you. Living a life where you're compromising every day and you're like, yeah, fine, whatever, this is my life now. Or choosing to believe in yourself and walking out of it irrespective of what the consequences are, but also considering those consequences. You cannot just, wipe everything and be like, okay, I'm off, bye. That's not how things work. But yeah, that's what I feel.
How are you perceived when you go back home? Are you perceived as a rebel, a liberator for women? Culture change. Like, how are you perceived? Are you a Gandhi?
No, not well. I'll tell you that. I
Really?
am not. My mom tells everybody, like her friends, if they come to meet me and if they have kids, my mom be like, "Don't listen to her. She's not a great influence. She will drive you nuts." And I'll tell you an example, Andre. This last year when I was in India, I went to meet my mom's sister and her family, and they're close. I've known them forever. And my cousin got married and has a wife and a 1 year old son. And we were just planning to go for a lunch. Like the whole family were planning to go for a lunch and then some drinks later and everything. And she was so hesitant because she had the baby and all that. And everyone were in the living room and I'm like, hold on. You have your partner, you're getting your child. Why are you the one thinking about this? And then we were all having our breakfast, and she's the one who's coming and picking things up and going and putting it in the sink. I'm like, why are you doing that? We all have hands and legs, and we will take our stuff and put it in the sink or wash it. And she's like, oh, no, but he's my husband and she's my mother in law. I'm like, no, let them do it. So my mom's like, this is not our house. Don't do that to them. She has to live there. Don't do it. I'm like, what?
Oh my God. Like, literally, when you go home, like, how many females actually come up to you and be like, I wish I had made a different choice?
Yeah. I mean, I see the disappointment in their face, but I also see the fact that they have accepted things the way they are. And I don't get that because I feel you're so strong as a woman. Like you can give birth to a child, have the child in you for 9 months, face any kind of adversity that occurs, but you still choose to underestimate your power. There are still people back home who say, oh, I cannot leave him because of the kids. I cannot leave him because I cannot do things alone, or I cannot leave him even if the partner is very abusive or they're very, just downright useless. The women will still stick with that same toxic man for years and years. And I don't blame the man. I will blame the woman because it's her choices and she's the one who first spoiled that guy with whatever she kept doing for the guy. And second, I will tell her that you need to start getting more courage to trust yourself and go out in the world, get a job, and then just move the F out and be happy with your life rather than being beaten every night and, getting abused or not being treated properly. I just don't get why women stick to toxic men like that their whole life.
You would think that the fathers of these women would step up and be like, hey, this is not cool.
They don't do that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So let's switch the narrative. Let's talk about opportunities and talk about the reason for IT and the book and so forth. If you're not allowed to, if you're in a cultural environment like that and you're not really, and you're taught tradition, when do you make the shift? Or how can the shift even be made to look for employment without being, cut off? Let's get real. You had a different mindset, different family structure. You left. You never looked back. You didn't leave your culture. To me, you elevated it to at least something that people should think about. Let's put it like that. You didn't abandon it. You just said, okay, even though I'm a female, and this is what they told me I should do, I didn't decide to go that route. So how do you, if you had to write a recipe for success, for change, what would you do? How would you do it for the people, the females that are back in India to get to where you're at?
Trust yourself. That would be the first important thing. Trust yourself. You have no idea how powerful you are, and you have no idea how much strength you have, because let's say you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. I still say this. I'm like, and I still think about it. If my dad wouldn't have passed away, there was no way that I think my mom would have been forced to step outside the house, get a job to feed her two kids, give them good education, and make sure that they're up on their feet. But she did it. She didn't know she had that in her, but she still did it. So you are going to find that strength in you. You just don't have to be dependent on them. And the recipe, I would just say, trust yourself, work smart, don't work hard, work smart, and say yes to every opportunity that you get. You don't, and there is no saying that, you cannot follow tradition to be successful. Both can go hand in hand, but even if it's love, success, money, tradition, religion, just don't follow it blindly. A, a teacher of mine told me this when I was very young, and I never understood it then, but I know it now. She said, people fall blindly in love. What they need to do instead is stand up in love. And I never understood that, but I understood it years later when I was fighting for him in front of my mom during the marriage thing. So, yeah.
I like that. So let's go here real quick. You mentioned IT and women,
Yes.
and the like of and so forth. Explain the reason of how all that came to be.
Yeah. When I moved to Omaha, I got a job. Amazing people, great company. It was a startup. It was in fintech. And what I noticed was in a team of 10 people, there would just be one or two women. Everybody else would be a man. And I understood why they always had that tag that IT is a male dominant industry. And it was so different for me. And that was a culture shock because back home, even in an engineering class, like a computer science engineering class, the ratio of girls to guys wasn't that huge. We would have at least 1.5 rows of girls. I mean, we had 3 columns of benches, and then 1.5 would be girls and the rest would be guys. So it was almost not equal, but still not too bad either. And so that was a shock to me because when I came here, I'm like, what? Why are there not enough women here? And then over happy hour, a couple drinks, one of my teammates, she said, she was a developer, and she said, very smart girl. And she said, you know what? In the US, girls think that IT is tough or that it's very complex. And as a kid, if you are into science, math, technology, then you're considered a nerd, or you're considered, a geek, or you're too bookish. And so people don't want that. And so that's why they never venture into knowing what computer science is, what programming languages are. I'm like, but that's not correct, because there's so much more in IT, and there's so many roles that do not require you to know programming language or anything about computers. Like if you are someone who can handle a group of people well, and if you can manage them, then you can easily become a scrum master. You can become a project manager, a product manager, and you don't have to know a single line of code. You don't even have to know how things work. So that's the beauty of it. That awareness was lacking, and I wanted to fix that gap. So that's when I wrote the book, The IT Girl. It has a list of jobs that do not require coding, their average median salary in the United States back then in 2021. And I had a framework where I teach people, if you're good at something, map those skills to a role in the tech industry.
Wow. Wow. You sure they ain't trying to recruit you to come back home? Man, you have dropped a lot of information today. Let's go here before we wrap up. You got a podcast. Tell me about it. What was the reason for it? And I love the title.
Thank you. Thank you, Andre. The reason for it was, I had this feeling where I started questioning things. And I'm like, okay, the version of success that was taught to me was very different. Like everybody says, get settled, buy a house, get a car. start a family, etc. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, okay, I got all those. Now what? This is not giving me happiness and I'm not satisfied. And so I had the first book and I'm like, okay, I need to do something more. Because I know I can do something more. And I like to talk. I like to ask questions. And I had the idea for a podcast in my head for a very long time in some corner, but I just didn't have the time to act on it.
Right.
And then I thought, okay, there's so many people who get, big shot guests, but nobody talks about common people like me who've gone from, not me, but, other common people with modest backgrounds who've gone from nothing to something. That's how I got the idea and I started getting guests. And it's been going great since the last 2.5 years.
Who's been your most inspirational guest? I know that's hard to ask because people ask me and I say, look, over 1,000 episodes, I couldn't tell you. But who has been some of the most exciting guests on your show and why?
So there have, like you say, yeah, a lot of them, and I cannot compare. But there was this one person. She was the producer, a Hollywood producer, and I actually have her review on my second book here on the cover page. Bella Fahum, her story, she as a person was very inspiring, and I loved her work ethic and her principles, and that she was self-made and nothing stopped her after her first thing didn't work out. Yeah, very inspirational. So I would say Cabela.
When I noticed something you touched on that you said she never stopped.
Yeah.
You've never stopped. What keeps you going? What keeps that beast mindset going for you? Because let's get real. When you go back home, a lot of people ain't ready for you. You're vibrating way up here. But there's a lot of women do resonate with you because you're like, let's call it what it is. You're like a female Gandhi. They wish they had that courage to step out of tradition and say, you know what, like you said, how can I combine tradition and my new way of thinking? And it's old saying, you can't make everybody happy, but you are definitely happy. So what keeps that beast mindset going with you?
I feel like I still have so much potential and I haven't lived up to it. And I just want to see what that looks like if I am using 100% of my mind and my body and my battery and everything. I just want to see what that looks like. So that's what keeps me going. And I have a very bad habit. I don't know if it's bad or good, but I have a very bad habit of asking, okay, what can I do next? How can I grow? What next can I learn? Teach me something that I don't already know. So that's what keeps me going.
Okay, I got to be around to watch all this evolution take place with you. You know that, right? So what's next for you? What's next for you?
Let's see. I want everybody to know my name without my last name. I don't know if you noticed, but I did not add my last name here, and I did not even add it on my book. I just have it as Sheekha S instead of Sheekha Singh.
Yeah.
Because I feel the minute your last name comes in the picture, people judge you and they already have a preconceived notion in your head. And I want to break that. I want people to know me by my first name, not my second name. Like, I don't even want them. Like, if they see my name, Sheekha, they need to know, like, they should know who I am instead of, oh, wait, is this name Indian? Is this name American? Is she from India? I don't want all that. I just want them to know my work with my first name, not my background, not my last name, not where I come from, nothing.
How often do you get approached with that, though? Because your first name is very unique. So does that happen? Does that happen to you often, even with your first name?
Yes.
How do you deflect it to get them the narrative to look? That's my name, but you need to know who I am.
I realized that after coming to the US. And I have coworkers from the US, actually all over the world. I work for a remote company. But like I said, the minute they know who you are, your color, everything, they just have this. And cliches are there for a reason. They are true. That's why it's a cliche. But I just end up explaining to them that, you know what, I bungee jump, I fly out of airplanes, and I do things that I don't think you would have heard anybody, even in your neighborhood, doing. So then when I see the shock on their face, I'm like, why are you shocked? They go, oh, but you're from India and you're a woman and you're this. I'm like, okay, no, that has to change.
Wait a minute. You bungee jump and you jump out of airplanes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's on my bucket list. And you've already done it.
It is so much fun. Bungee jumping is so cool.
Okay, that is totally crazy. You're a different breed. Let's call it what it is. Why is it that you were able to transcend your career when most women from your region, I don't get the same story. But the tripped out part about this is you came from a single family household.
Yes.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but
no, all good.
I need to know, because I'm getting so many different versions of beautiful women from India that's telling me completely different stories. And here it is. Not saying that the stories aren't valid, but I want to know how you got to be where you was at, where you at currently.
I think it's the feeling and the courage and the confidence on, like, you need to be confident about yourself. And if you want to play the victim, then fine. But you cannot keep playing the victim all the time. And you cannot blame everybody else. At some point in life, I think you have to sit back and think, okay, I have the choice. Everybody, and I think it's not just Indian women, but many women all around, they have a choice. They have a choice to walk out. They have a choice to change the job. And most important of all, I feel they have a choice to speak up. And I think that's what I did. If there was anybody else, because I look at my friends around, Indian friends again, their priorities are very different. So when I decided to move to Canada, everybody said, are you mad? You have the H-1B, like you are living the dream.
What is the H-1B for people like myself that don't know what that means?
Yeah, sure. It's the work visa. So if you've come to the United States as a student visa, the next step after you get your degree is the work visa. And that's something that's very competitive. And now the rules have changed. Back then, when I was working from 2016 to 2019, the rules were, it would be a lottery system. And I think they would issue only 80,000 H-1B visas, but the number of people applying for it would be 300,000.
But I know you tapped on something. I'm trying to be politically correct here. I'm trying to be politically correct. So let me, forgive me if I say this the wrong way.
No worries.
A lot of the women that I've had on is culture based, but you have changed the culture base to being more of an independent base. So how difficult is it for a female from India when you talk about regions? Okay, because I'm pretty sure it's huge. That culture belief has to be pretty, let's say 98.6% of a lot of women that don't think the way you think. So what message would you give them? Your podcast is about, saying, hey, you can do this, but let's get real. When you're embedded with so much culture and religious culture and told this is how it can be, are you going to be turned against? What do you tell somebody like that?
Are you being true to yourself? Or are you faking it just to make everybody else around you comfortable? Because that's what I do. So when I meet my friends and when they invite me over for any religious event or anything, I ask them, do you know the reason why you're doing this. Like, for example, if you exchange rice, there is a whole thing where women exchange rice with each other and it's uncooked rice. And then they exchange some other stuff. When I ask them, do you know why? Like, what's the reason behind you doing this? Yes, you're doing it for, religious reasons, but what's the actual reason? Why is it rice? Why is it not something else? Why is it just women to women? Why is it not men? They don't have an answer. And so to me, it's very astounding. For example, like my mom and my sister, they're religious. My grandma was super religious. She would make us do everything. I went to a Catholic school growing up, both me and my sister. And my grandma, when she would do all the ceremonies at home, because we were kids, my sister and I would sit there and say, "Oh, our Father in heaven." And she would get mad. I'm like, "Why are you mad? Isn't like every religion teaching that there's just one God and everything's the same?" And she's like, "No, you're a Hindu. You're supposed to learn what I'm teaching you, and you're supposed to know all these things." And I'm like, okay. After a while, I stopped questioning people because I just didn't find any rhyme or reason. They were just doing it for the sake of doing. For example, there's this huge belief in the Indian community to not eat non-veg, to not eat meat on certain day. And they give the label of a certain type of God. So if it's like a certain type of God, you're not supposed to eat meat on Mondays. If it's a different God, then you're not supposed to eat meat on Saturdays. And I'm like, okay, there must have been some reason to it back in the day, but I guess they wanted more people to follow. So they just tried to, that's just my theory. But then when I ask myself, I'm like, I don't need to have a religious reason to do something that's going to benefit my health. If I don't want to eat meat on a certain day, I'm not going to eat meat, but I'm not going to put a label on it and say, "Oh, I'm Indian, and this God is going to be upset with me if I eat meat today or if I don't eat meat today."
How do you resonate with, how are you accepted with, because that's, and trust me, I have friends that's like that went through the same, I can't mention their names. I remember this one particular person in general. He wanted to marry somebody else. He came to America and wanted to marry somebody. His family, now they're group, is it called groupies that they give you?
Yes.
They came from a lot of groupies, a lot of money. And he was like, "Andre, I don't want to marry her. And I didn't see him for a long time because he went back. 5 years later, I seen him at the Target. "Hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah." He remembered me, and it was almost like he was shamed because he had to marry the individual that his family picked out. Now, he married her, had kids, the whole 9 yards. So I talked to some other friends that knew him. It was like he didn't want to marry her, but he had to go with tradition. And I'm thinking to myself, when do you just break the cycle, says enough is enough?
Exactly.
Anyway, so how were you being accepted with, you've changed? It's almost like you became a rebel.
I did because I wasn't getting answers, Andre, and the answers that I was getting didn't make sense to me. And so when I go to meet people, I set boundaries in a good way. I used to suck at doing that, but now I set boundaries. So I tell my friends, if you want to hang out with me, don't use the reason of a religious event to invite me to your place for a lunch or a dinner. If you want to cook, first of all, you don't need a reason. So if you invite me, I'm going to come anyways, but don't have that tag or that religious tag and say, "Oh, it's this festival and I want you to do this." And then, it's that. So I think my friends have understood, like, this is how I am, and they don't bother me anymore. But yeah, it took a lot of explaining from my end, and my mom still gets angry at me. And if I do certain things, I'll give you an example. What car do you drive, Andre? I know it's a personal question, but
I drive a 370Z Nissan and a 350Z Nissan.
Nice. Okay. So my husband was into trucks. And so he got a Dodge Ram, 2 years ago. And my mom was visiting us in Canada. And he got it from the showroom and it was a used car. But she said, hold on. Before he even drives it out of the driveway, there is something that I need to do. And she went back inside. She got some turmeric. She got 4 lemons to keep underneath the tires on each side, and like one on each side for each tires. And then she drew something on the car. She got a coconut and then she just did like that and then broke it and then prayed something. And she said, okay, Simon, now you can drive the car out of the driveway. And I am standing there. I'm like, what are you doing? And she goes, keep all your beliefs to yourself. I believe in something strongly, so I'm going to do it anyways. And this is for his safety. I'm like, okay, so you think 4 lemons and a coconut is going to save him on the 401 when he drives at 90 kilometers per hour?
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I still get that resistance a lot from friends and family. But I've understood that's only because even they have not been taught to question certain things.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on the show. But before we wrap up, how can the viewers reach out to you, get your book, and follow you on your podcast?
Both my books are on Amazon. Search for Unburnable Ambition or my name. It has 2 E's in it, Sheekha. You can also find me on my website, sheekasingh.com. The name of my podcast is available on all platforms, including Amazon and Apple. It's Rise and Tell with Sheekha. And if you want to know more juicy updates from my life, then go follow me on Instagram.
And this is another tip. For those that also want to listen to her podcast, you can listen to it on the I Am Beast radio station. I throw that out there for you as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Sheekha, thank you so much for taking time to come onto the show. Guys, make sure you click that button, share, like, subscribe, follow. All it takes is one click to make a difference in your life or change somebody else's life. This has been another, and I do mean another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show.